Epstein was then able to go re-offend, and Trump appointed him in 2017. So I don't want to hear the dude that was brought to the White House to cover up sexual abuse saying that there was, I don't like, what are you trying to say here? Yeah.
You gonna wipe your face? Can you just wipe that little thing off your face there a little bit? You got a little,
right, hold on a
mud on your face.
You have no points.
Hold on a second.
No
Can I
points,
just-
huh?
Hey guys, welcome back. This is one of those panels where you can watch somebody run out of arguments live on air, and then watch what he reaches for once the arguments are gone. Piers Morgan had Adam Mockler and Jack Posobiec on together, along with a former CIA officer and a commentator named Brian. It opens as a normal conversation about Elon Musk launching his own political party, and Jack is fine here. He's making a real point. Then the subject changes, and he's got nothing, and the whole thing turns into a playground. Demand a source you're sure the other guy doesn't have. Tell everyone the point is old news, so nobody has to answer it. When that fails, start naming other people. Those are the 3 moves, and once you spot them, you'll catch them everywhere. Worth knowing before you watch. Jack was one of the online figures invited to the White House and handed those documents for the first release. So he's not a neutral guest here. He was part of the story. Stay with it, because he asks for proof at one point and gets handed it in about 5 seconds. Also, let me know in the comments, what's the most obvious sign to you that someone's lost an argument and won't admit it? And drop your country down below while you're there. I like seeing where you guys are watching from. All right, let's get into it.
Jack, what do you feel about this? A lot of people on the MAGA side of Trump's support were pretty dubious about Elon Musk to start with. You know, a lot of them thought, well, this guy was a Democrat, and now he's come over, and maybe he's just trying to buy his way into power, get Trump elected, and use that to benefit all his companies, which obviously do benefit and have benefited from that association. But now it's gone the other way, and he's clearly trying to punish Trump and punish Republicans in launching this third party. What do you feel about the politics going on here?
Well, I think the politics that everyone said, and I broadly agree with everyone's take so far on here. I think this is a way to put leverage on President Trump, to put leverage on the party as we go towards the elections and then determining the swing of things. Because look, people are saying, what about the presidential race and Ross Perot? And certainly with the tight margins that we saw in the 7 swing states, you could play a role there. But look at the midterms right now. With congressional majority in the House being as small as it is, you would only need to flip a couple of seats, run a couple of spoiler candidates in a few of those tight races, and you could easily flip the House one way or the other. So what it does is right now, today, is buy him much more leverage than he even had before. And he can do that without even running a single candidate anywhere. And I think he'd be much more successful with a project like this at the state level, at the House level, and at the Senate level than at the presidential level. And he can do so quite immediately.
I mean, obviously, you've got a massive clash of 2 gigantic egos here, and people used to getting their own way. Do you think, I can't see them really making up from this. I mean, Trump called him a train wreck last night. Elon's been hammering away, dismissing his big, beautiful bill as a total disaster that will bankrupt the country. It's very hard to see how they make up here, isn't it, Jack?
Well, I would say never count anything out. I mean, you've seen President Trump be able to make friends or allies of rivals in the past, and he certainly has the ability to do so, sometimes even against the wishes of MAGA. But, you know, that's certainly his prerogative. For Elon, you know, absolutely, he's got a track record of moving from one thing to the other. But if he sees perhaps a path forward from a business perspective, look, keep in mind, he's still got to deal with the government in terms of a lot of the contracts for his companies, in terms of Department of Defense, in terms of NASA, in terms of Tesla. So he's going to need a lot of this going forward, and I think whether they like it or not, they're stuck together.
He was friends with Epstein. He'll be friends with Elon.
What was that?
He was friends with Epstein. I'm sure he can be friends with Elon Musk.
He actually helped Epstein be prosecuted. He was the only person who was involved, kicked him out of the Epstein. You know all this, like it's just a very.
Have you heard of Alexander Acosta, the Florida district attorney who was?
Like your little,
have you
like,
heard of Alexander Acosta? You know who that is?
You're like, oh, I got it. Look at me, like I'm the guy from Third Eye.
Do you know who Alexander Acosta is?
No,
you were duped to cover up sexual abuse of
Donald
children.
Trump was
you were
kicked
duped.
him out of Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump was the only one who went to investigators and said, "I will
Piers,
work
do you know
with
who
you
Alexander
against
Acosta
Epstein."
is?
This has been litigated a
Can I just
million.
Jack Posobiec does the smartest thing anybody defending this White House can do when the coalition starts cracking. He turns a meltdown into a chess lesson. Jack said this, so what it does is right now today is buy him much more leverage than he even had before. And he can do that without even running a single candidate anywhere. And on the pure mechanics, he is right, which is exactly why the move works so well for him. A brand new party in a house this tight does not have to win anything. It only has to pull 2 or 3 points out of a few close races, and the majority flip. Fine, that is real, but look at what that answer quietly does. It takes the richest man on the planet threatening to break apart the party he helped put in power, and it turns that into a tactic, a strategy, something you nod along to. Nobody on that panel ever has to explain why the split happened, or what it says about the people who are still defending it. And here's the part that should make you sit up. The whole premise everybody accepted, that enough money plus enough attention equals a real political party, has already been tested in this country with a much stronger hand, and it lost. In 1912, Theodore Roosevelt, a former president, nationally famous, with an actual organized following behind him, ran on his own bull moose ticket. He beat the sitting Republican in the popular vote. He still lost. All he really accomplished was splitting his old party badly enough to hand the presidency to Woodrow Wilson. That is what a serious third party looked like with the best possible candidate. Now somebody is trying it with more money and fewer people. Then Piers Morgan frames the whole thing perfectly. Piers said this, "You've got a massive clash of 2 gigantic egos here." And Jack's response is, weirdly, the most honest sentence he produces all night. Jack said this, whether they like it or not, they're stuck together. Stuck. Not aligned. Not sharing a vision for the country. Stuck. And he tells you exactly why, which is contracts. Space contracts. Defense contracts. Car company money. Sit with that for a second. The relationship between this administration and its loudest former ally is being held together by invoices, and everyone treats that as normal analysis instead of the confession it actually is. Then Adam Mockler ends the entire strategy conversation with one question. Adam said this, have you heard of Alexander Acosta? You know who that is? And watch what happens to the room.
Something here.
Times.
Well,
It's been litigated a million
first of all,
times.
Can I just?
well,
can I
Brian, I'll
just-
come to you, but Adam, just explain what you're talking about.
Yeah, really quickly, Alexander Acosta was a Florida district attorney. You can look this up. He knew both Trump and Epstein. He was appointed as a Secretary of Labor under Trump and had to resign in 2017 because people found out that he mishandled the Epstein case in 2007 and let Epstein get an illegal plea deal. Epstein was then able to go re-offend, and Trump appointed him in 2017. So I don't want to hear the dude that was brought to the White House to cover up sexual abuse saying that there was, I don't, like, what are you trying to say here? Yeah.
You gonna wipe your face? Can you just wipe
Yeah.
that little thing off your face there a little bit? You got a little,
All right,
you got
hold on
a
a
little
sec.
mud on your face.
Okay.
You have no
there.
points.
Hold on a second.
No
Can I
points,
just-
huh?
Can I add
You
something?
got a little
First
mud
of
on your
all,
face
I
there.
hear the MAGA bullshit detector going off every single time Jack opens his mouth. First of all, people like Jack were the people who called Joe Biden a pedophile for sniffing hair, but yet we have Jeffrey Epstein on tape calling Donald Trump his best friend. They were hanging out together constantly. I've spoken to Jeffrey Epstein's brother
Do you want me
many
to go
times.
through the list
They were
of all
very
the
close.
Democrats
I'm
he was
not done
friends
yet,
with?
Jack.
Piers, like,
Jack,
we can
Jack,
go
that's
through all
Jack,
this again, but Piers,
Jack,
I know you've done
Jack,
this
I'm not done
million
yet. I didn't
times, and
interrupt you.
You've
Jack,
been a real reporter
Jack,
on this. These guys just want to
Jack,
play politics. I'm trying to
Jack,
be serious here.
Jack.
Dude, you were at the White
Jack,
House
I'm
with
a
Epstein
talk show
files
host
in
here.
your hand.
Yeah, just talked about it.
Right, exactly, Jack. Jack, just you want to defend Donald Trump and wear the Donald Trump knee pads 24/7, but when it comes to a Democrat, they're all pedophiles. But if Donald Trump is actually hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein and
So do you
Epstein
have like
calls
any
him
evidence
his
of
best
this? Like,
friend,
do you have like a source on that, bro?
No,
Give me,
because
like,
the
any
Pan body
actual
won't
evidence.
release
So
the
you wanna-
sources.
Actually, yeah, I do. The Maxwell trial, where it was
let's hear it.
learned that
Please,
he
show
was
us.
on the Epstein flight. Why don't you listen? It was in the trial, in the Maxwell trial, that he was on the flight log 7 times. We have Jeffrey Epstein on
Bill Clinton was on
audio
there 26
calling
times.
him his best friend. So here's my question to Jack. Jack,
And how
if
many times did Bill
Jeffrey
Clinton go to
Epstein
the
was on
islands?
audio,
And how many times did
Hey,
Jeffrey Epstein say
first
that
of all,
he was one of the
that's
founding
called
members of the
whataboutism.
Clinton Institute?
I don't defend
Clinton Global
Jack.
Initiative.
Jack, if Jeffrey Epstein
this
was
all day
on
long, bro.
audio saying that Joe Biden was his best friend, that wouldn't concern you at all.
Man, these are
all
like
you do is
2016
deflect and you
talking
talk about
points,
other
like, don't you
people.
Adam Mockler asks for one name, gets nothing back except crosstalk, and then finally gets about 10 seconds to say what he means. His answer is that the man mishandled that case back in 2007 and signed off on a deal that should never have been legal. Here is the context the clip moves too fast to give you. Alexander Acosta was the top federal prosecutor in southern Florida when that file landed on his desk. Federal investigators had already built the case. Instead of taking it into federal court, he signed a non-prosecution agreement that pushed the entire matter down to the state level, and the people who had come forward were never told the agreement existed. Years later, a federal judge ruled that keeping them uninformed broke the Crime Victims' Rights Act, a federal statute passed in 2004 that says people in their position have a right to be informed and a right to be heard. And the man who signed that agreement did not fade away. He was given a cabinet post, labor secretary, and he held it until 2019 when the story came back around and he walked out the door. That is not a talking point. That is a signature on a document sitting in the public record, and Jack cannot touch it. He deflects, he says it has been litigated, he does everything except say the name back. You have to understand something about how these arguments work on live television. When somebody stops arguing the point and starts arguing that the point is old news, they are telling you they cannot beat it. Litigated does not mean answered. It means please stop. Then Brian jumps in with the read of the night. Brian said this: I hear the MAGA detector going off every single time Jack opens his mouth, and here is where it truly falls apart. Jack, cornered, reaches for the oldest move there is. Jack said this: do you have like a source on that, bro? Bro? He says bro on a live panel on a subject where there is an actual trial transcript sitting in the public record, and that is the tell. Demanding a source is supposed to sound rigorous, but the only reason you throw it out that casually is if you are betting the other guy does not have one ready. He had one ready. Brian said this: it was in the trial, in the Maxwell trial, that he was on the flight log 7 times. That is a court proceeding. Those are documents entered into evidence and picked over by lawyers on both sides. This is what I keep telling people. The strongest thing our side has in this fight is not volume, it is paperwork. Jack asked for a receipt in front of a live audience and got handed one in under 5 seconds. And after that, he never recovers his footing for the rest of this exchange. He goes straight to naming other people instead.
You guys have anything new? Do you
I mean, my
anything new
line
about this?
about the
Release the
Epstein,
files.
but my line about the
Anything
Epstein
new?
circle of famous friends is, to me, that there's a clear line before his initial conviction, which was a complete stitch up in his favour, no question of that.
Jack, why won't they release the files then?
Well, hang on, Brian.
Called for them to.
Hang on, Brian. The point I'm going to make is, I do think if you continue to be a friend of Epstein, knowing he was a convicted pedophile after whatever it was, 2009 or so, as Prince Andrew did, for example, then I'm afraid that is seriously problematic. For those who were in his circle, of a wide circle of well-known people, from Bill Gates to Trump to all these, Bill Clinton, I mean, he hooked in everybody, but a lot of them had nothing to do with him, including Trump, I believe, after that conviction. But if you carried on seeing him as Andrew did, living at his house for a few days, years later, knowing he was a convicted pedophile, that is different. I mean, do we agree?
Yeah, I think that's all been litigated.
I certainly agree with what you're saying, Piers, and your point there. But the point that I'm trying to make is there has to be a reason why they're not releasing the files. Why are they being so mum? Why is the list just magically disappeared? And I think one can come to a very logical conclusion, unless you're Jack and you defend Donald Trump 24/7, that maybe there might be something to do with the fact that Trump might be in these files and there might be some wrongdoing there, considering the fact that they were at one point best friends.
Well,
Piers Morgan does something here that I have to give him credit for, because it is the fairest possible version of the argument, and it still does not save anybody. He draws a line at the point where that first case was resolved, and he argues that the resolution itself was a stitch up in the man's favor, which means everybody who was around before it should be judged differently from everybody who stayed around after. That is a real standard, and it is a generous one. Before that point, plenty of famous people were pulled into that world without knowing what was underneath it. Business people, politicians, academics, royalty. Fine, grant all of that. But a standard only means something if you actually apply it. And the moment you do, the question stops being about who shook whose hand at a party 25 years ago. It becomes about who kept showing up afterward. And more importantly, who is deciding what stays sealed right now. Because that second part is happening in the present tense. And no amount of talk about the 90s touches it. Which is exactly why Brian will not let the question go. Brian said this: Jack, why won't they release the files then? Nobody answers him. Not Jack, not anybody. Piers has to hold him back to finish his own point. And even after all of that, the question just sits there in the middle of the table like a plate nobody wants to pick up. Brian said this: there has to be a reason why they're not releasing the files. Why are they being so mum? Why is the list just magically disappeared? And here is what people do not realize about how damaging that question actually is. This was not a promise made quietly. Influencers were invited in, handed binders, photographed holding them up, and told the country that the first batch was only the beginning. The whole political brand was built on the idea idea that the people at the top were hiding something and only duffing it. This group was brave enough to open it up. Then the second batch never comes. Then the explanation changes. Then it goes from, we are going to reveal everything, to, there is nothing to reveal, and we are told to move on. You do not get to have both. You cannot spend years telling people that the government protects powerful men, build an entire movement on that promise, and then ask those same people to accept a shrug as the final answer. That is not a policy failure. That is the exact behavior they built their careers accusing everybody else of. And that is why Jack loses this segment so badly. Not because he was outnumbered, though he was. He loses because he came in ready to argue about who was friends with whom in 1998, and Brian and Adam were arguing about what is being withheld right now. Those are not the same fight, and only one of them has documents attached. The most revealing moment of the whole thing is not any single line. It is the silence after the question. Everyone on that panel, including the people defending the administration, knows there is no good answer available, so the conversation moves on. It always moves on. And the people who went to court for years trying to get that record opened are still waiting for somebody to finish what was promised. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.